fun begins.
How's it going?
Hello.
Well,
Greetings, young Jedi.
hello there.
Hey everyone, Hybrid Toy Reviews here with episode 2 of Black Series of Yesteryear, the Black Series retrospective series where once a week I talk about the Black Series that came out in, well, yesteryear. We're going to go through the series in order, and the last one was on the Orange Line Wave 1, so of course it only makes sense to talk about the Orange Line Wave 2. This case contains 4 pretty cool characters. You have Han Solo, Greedo, Princess Leia in her slave outfit, and Boba Fett from The Empire Strikes Back. A really great mix of characters here, and honestly, it's really fun assortment. It is, of course, purely original trilogy locked in. This is back in the days before the sequels, so you only had 6 movies to pick from and a Clone Wars animated series, but that's alright. You still had 4 really cool characters sprinkled from all throughout that trilogy, and I honestly do have to credit them for having such a good assortment here. I remember this wave pretty fondly back in the day. I also remember this wave sitting a lot. Well, not Boba Fett. I actually don't think to date I've ever seen this Boba Fett on pegs anywhere. I've seen it at conventions and online and stuff, but there was a long time where, you would go to Walmart and every Target had some Greedos, some Han Solos, some Slave Leias, and Boba Fett was gone. And, that could have been particularly damning in the early days of the line, because I'm sure there was a lot of people that were just getting Boba Fett because he was Boba Fett, and they weren't really here to get into a new figure line. And that's kind of sad, because I gotta say, this wave actually had some pretty good stuff in it. So, to run through them, we'll start with Greedo. I gotta say, Greedo, very brief character, right? In the original trilogy and A New Hope for like 2 minutes. It's an iconic scene. It sets up who Han Solo is. But, he's kind of just a generic bounty hunter in a jumpsuit and an orange vest. He comes with a pistol. But I gotta say, Hasbro was really showing their sculpting chops here in the early days. That head sculpt holds up to date. Objectively, the figure holds up to date. They somewhat recently put him on the Lucasfilm 50th Power of the Force 2 card back, and they didn't have to change anything on the figure. He basically is almost a straight reissue, and he still looks good to date. I wouldn't mind getting a new sculpt of Greedo, but this figure has aged fairly well, and even though there's some ugly things like thigh swivel and double pin knees, which I generally hate, it's like, do I really want them to spend a bunch of budget on Greedo of all characters? I kind of just understand how that kind of thing works, and I don't know that I need it. But this Greedo was very, very well done for the age. So well done that I'm just not chomping at the bit for a new one. I just gotta praise it endlessly. Good work on Greedo here, and it really sucks that something that's objectively a very good action figure peg-warmed as hard as he did. He sat at Walmart until the sequels started. Like, this guy had a good 18 months on shelves nonstop. And actually was one of the first figures I ever saw. I went to Target to buy my first ever Black Series figure. I knew I would be picking a Black Series figure, and the only 2 on shelves were X-Wing pilot Luke and Greedo. And I picked Luke because if you're only going to have one figure, why would you pick Greedo? And I'm ultimately glad I did. Next up, you get the A New Hope Han Solo, and this figure, to date, is probably one of the better valued figures in the line. He came out in 2013, of course, so he was at that suggested retail of $19.99, and he comes with a bunch of swappable parts. And some people always like to reference this figure as the standard. The line set the standards early, and it's been dropping ever since. I don't view it like that. I think, these first 1, 2, 3 waves, you really want to try and just get people hooked in. And while it would be cool if figures came with this many accessories to date, it just doesn't bother me that they don't, and maybe it's just me not giving enough, but I just don't, I'm not bothered by it. But Han Solo comes with his DL-44 pistol. He comes with a Stormtrooper blaster. He comes with his standard gun belt and then a Stormtrooper belt to recreate the second half of the Death Star scenes in The New Hope. And then he comes with swappable hands. So you can either just have his normal bare hands or his pilot glove hands. And both really good options there. It lets you have a variety of appearances for Han Solo. And I gotta say, considering 2013 painted faces, I didn't mind this one. I looked at it and I was like, It's not like amazing, but I could see the attempt at Harrison Ford here. I didn't like hate it. Now, of course, compared to new ones, we very recently gotten a new sculpt for New Hope Han. Yes, of course they can do a better Harrison Ford these days. But I didn't look at this and go, ugh, no. Like I wasn't against it back in the day. So I think that it has aged okay, but of course there's better options now. So why go grabbing this one? Next, let's take a look at the controversial one, the Slave Leia from Return of the Jedi. This figure was not a very good figure at the time. It of the original, at this point there would have been 8 Black Series figures. I would argue that of the 8, she was the worst of the bunch. She had just very ugly proportions and gappy joints, and she didn't have an ankle pivot, and her likeness was just rough. It just really was not the best way to introduce Princess Leia to the line. And you could tell because every Walmart and Target you would go to had pegs of her. They just could not move Slave Leia. And that's unfortunate because then that dad went down the toy aisle one day and decided to be all controversial and, well, isn't it offensive that she was a slave in the movie I didn't see? Like, whatever. But anyway, it created a whole situation like 3 years after the figure came out, and it's just what it is. But the Slave Leia figure is one that I would love to see get a redo, but due to personal politics of some, we probably will never see again. Although hope is not lost, Lego did get to include the figure for the first time in a decade during the UCS Jabba Sail Barge, so maybe she's back on the table. Who knows? Maybe you should vote for her in the Black Series Most Wanted poll. That would be how that happens, right? But people would like a new Slave Leia, I think, just a head-to-toe redo. And then the final one, the one that everyone was grabbing and leaving the others on the shelves, is Boba Fett. Technically his second go, because Boba Fett was made as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive the summer before Wave 1 dropped to announce the line, and it came with Han and Carbonite. Now this one does not come with the Han and Carbonite, but it is Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett with his, E11, and then his little side pistol and his jetpack, and it objectively looks good. I can't knock the appearance of this figure, but the articulation was bad. I remember overpaying for it on eBay back in the day. By the time that Wave 3 was getting to be a little old, I was like, hey, yeah, probably not going to be able to get my hands on this one. Remember, I got it for like $35 or something, like, whatever. I remember getting it and just kind of being like, oh, this thing's not the best. He has these great big pouches on the front of his belt that block you from swinging his legs forward in any way at all. And he's just a very frustrating figure to pose. I remember just not really liking it very much at all. And they reissued and repainted it over and over and over and over again. And it's just what it is. I am so glad that they seem to have quit reusing this sculpt. I believe at one point there was a rumor of getting a new Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, which would be a welcome upgrade because this one needs to be retired. So yeah, it was like okay for the time, and objectively, like I said, it looks good, but just the articulation was not the best that they could have done, and many figures since then have proven that you can do a Boba Fett with pouches and stuff, and not let it ruin the figure. So, yeah, it's one that, it happened, it came, it went, a lot of people held it in very high regard, and to me, it was just another figure. But that's really all I got to say here. We had 4 pretty good figures here, some disappointments in 2 of them. The other 2 were pretty great. Oddly enough, out of this whole set, Greedo, the peg warmer, is the standout to me. I think that he is a really good figure and one of the few from the early days in the line that are really worthy of going back and picking up. I don't think there's anything in Wave 1 that you should be picking up these days, and I think that Greedo is the only thing in Wave 2 you should really be trying to pick up these days. So, if you can pick up Greedo, whether it be one of the reissues or whether it's this one, I think you would be doing your little bounty hunter collection, part of your collection, a good addition. So, that's all for now. Thanks for hanging out with me and talking about some Black Series of Yesteryear. Come back next week where we will talk about Wave 3 and the first reissue in the line. And that is it for now. May the Force be with each and every one of you, and have a good